Since the dawn of humanity, the pursuit of knowledge has been one of the most defining qualities of mankind. When people ask the question, who was the father of science, they are not simply asking about a single individual. They are asking about the origins of human curiosity, the first steps toward understanding the world, and the earliest attempts to replace mystery with explanation. To answer this question fully, we need to look at history from different perspectives: the spiritual and religious origins of knowledge, the early philosophers who sought natural explanations, the contributions of ancient civilizations, and the collective journey of humanity that shaped science as we know it today. From the Islamic perspective, the beginning of knowledge starts with the very first human being, Prophet Adam, peace be upon him. According to the Quran, Allah taught Adam the names of all things, a moment that symbolizes the gift of knowledge. This act represents the foundation of learning, understanding, and observation. It is not an exaggeration to say that if one asks who the first true possessor of knowledge was, then Adam stands as the earliest figure to be recognized. In this sense, he can be seen as the one who received the first light of knowledge directly from the Creator. This Islamic understanding is vital because it shows that science, or the search for understanding, is not merely a human invention but a gift from God that humanity is meant to use responsibly. However, when historians speak about the father of science, they usually refer to people in recorded history who began to explain the universe not through myths or divine interventions but through natural causes. The most famous name associated with this title is Thales of Miletus, a philosopher from ancient Greece who lived around 624 to 546 BCE. Thales is often regarded as the first true scientist because he tried to explain natural phenomena through observation and reasoning rather than attributing everything to the gods. For example, he believed that water was the fundamental principle of the universe and that everything originated from it. While his ideas may sound simplistic today, they were groundbreaking at that time because they marked a shift from mythological explanations to rational inquiry. Thales is also credited with predicting a solar eclipse, understanding basic geometry, and studying the properties of magnets and amber. His work laid the foundation for later philosophers and scientists. He demonstrated that nature could be studied, patterns could be observed, and explanations could be sought without relying on supernatural myths. This is why so many scholars call him the father of science. Yet, even after Thales, the path of science was not straightforward. His students and successors, like Anaximander and Anaximenes, continued to ask questions about the cosmos, while later figures like Pythagoras focused on mathematics as the language of nature. Another name that frequently arises when discussing the father of science is Aristotle, who lived from 384 to 322 BC. Aristotle was a student of Plato and later the teacher of Alexander the Great, but more importantly, he was one of the first to systematically study nature. He wrote extensively on biology, physics, ethics, logic, and many other subjects. Aristotle categorized plants and animals, attempted to describe the causes of motion, and laid down principles of reasoning that influenced science for centuries. Although many of his ideas were later proven wrong, his method of observing, recording, and trying to generalize from evidence was revolutionary. Some historians therefore argue that Aristotle deserves the title of father of science because he created a systematic approach to studying the natural world. It is important to remember that knowledge was not limited to Greece. Ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians and Mesopotamians had advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and medicine long before Thales and Aristotle. The Babylonians could predict eclipses and chart the movements of planets. The Egyptians mastered engineering to build pyramids with precise alignment to the stars. Indian scholars developed mathematical concepts like zero and infinity. Chinese civilizations studied medicine, astronomy, and engineering in ways that shaped their societies. In this sense, science was not born from one person alone but from the collective wisdom of many cultures. Still, the Greek philosophers are often singled out because they were the first to document and formalize their ideas as philosophical systems of inquiry. Fast forward several centuries, the torch of knowledge passed into the hands of Muslim scholars during the Islamic Golden Age. From the 8th to the 14th centuries, scholars in the Islamic world translated Greek texts, expanded upon them, and introduced entirely new concepts. This period is crucial when discussing the father of science because it reminds us that science is not a straight line from Greece to Europe but a global heritage. Figures like al-Khwarizmi, known as the father of algebra, developed mathematical systems that are still in use today. Ibn Sina or Avicenna wrote the Canon of Medicine, which was the standard medical textbook in Europe for centuries. Al-Biruni made precise calculations about the Earth's circumference, studied geology, and compared civilizations. Ibn al-Haytham, often called al-Haytham, laid the foundation for optics and the scientific method itself by insisting on experimentation and proof. If one were to ask Ibn al-Haytham who the father of science was, he might have answered that science is not the property of one man but of the method itself. His approach of testing hypotheses, using controlled experiments, and recording observations is what modern scientists still rely upon. Some scholars even argue that Ibn al-Haytham deserves the title of father of modern science, because he moved beyond speculation and mythology into a systematic method of verification. When Europe entered the Renaissance and Enlightenment, thinkers like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and Newton transformed the understanding of the universe. Galileo, in particular, is sometimes called the father of modern science because he used experiments and mathematics to describe physical laws. His work in astronomy, such as observing the moons of Jupiter, challenged long-held beliefs and laid the foundation for physics. Isaac Newton, with his laws of motion and universal gravitation, pushed science into a new era. These developments were only possible because of the cumulative knowledge inherited from ancient and Islamic scholars. So who really deserves the title of father of science? The answer is complex. From the Islamic faith-based view, the very first was Adam, who was given knowledge by God. From ancient philosophy, Thales of Miletus is usually recognized as the first to approach the world scientifically. Aristotle built a systematic framework, while Ibn al-Haytham refined the scientific method, and Galileo carried it into the modern age. Each of these figures played a critical role, and without them, science would not be what it is today. It is also important to understand that the idea of a single father of science oversimplifies reality. Science has never been the achievement of one man or one culture. It is a collective journey spanning thousands of years. Each generation built upon the insights of the previous one. The Babylonians gave mathematics and astronomy. The Greeks gave philosophy and logic. The Muslims gave experimentation and method. The Europeans gave refinement, measurement, and application. Modern science today continues to be a global effort with contributions from every culture. Nevertheless, the question remains popular because people like to trace the origins of great achievements back to a single source. For that reason, when asked directly, most historians will point to Thales of Miletus as the earliest scientist in recorded history, while many others highlight Aristotle as the more systematic thinker who deserves the title. For those who value the methodology of science rather than its earliest beginnings, Ibn al-Haytham and Galileo stand as the fathers of the modern scientific method. In conclusion, the identity of the father of science depends on the lens through which we look. Spiritually, knowledge begins with Adam. Historically, the first rational philosopher was Thales. Systematically, Aristotle shaped the approach. Methodologically, Ibn al-Haytham gave science its experimental backbone. Practically, Galileo ushered in the modern era. Science has no single father but many, and each of them represents humanity's unstoppable desire to understand the universe. The true father of science, therefore, may not be a single individual but the spirit of inquiry itself that lives within humanity, pushing us from ignorance to knowledge, from darkness to light, from myth to truth.